Hi, this is Kelly Peterson with Sussex County Beach Living, and today I'm so excited. I am in Lewes and we are at the Lightship Overfalls, and I have the president of the foundation here, Michael, and Michael's going to share a little bit about some of the history, and we're going to learn about the whole thing about the ships and what their purpose was back in the day. So Michael, go ahead and share a little bit about the history.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
We here at the Lightship Overfalls, we're pretty proud of the ship that we have here in Lewes. She was built in 1938 for the U.S. Lighthouse service, and then shortly after that, the U.S. Coast Guard took over the Lighthouse service. And she'd been with the Coast Guard all the way up until she was decommissioned in 1972.
Wow.
She came to Lewes in 1973, and we've had her ever since. In fact, in 2023, we're going to be celebrating her 50th anniversary of her being in Lewes.
That's amazing, and I think that's a great, place to have it here because Lewes is known for its maritime heritage. So it's great to see this. I've seen it so many times, but I think a lot of people have seen it but don't know much about it. So yeah, could you share a little bit about what was the purpose for these lightships, in the back time history?
Well, lightships have been around for centuries, and in the case of the United States, since the birth of our nation. And lightships were used to principally mark the entrances to harbors, so that ships would know where the entrances were, but they were also used to mark dangers at sea. And in the case of the Overfalls station here off of Lewes Beach, the Overfalls Shoals was a dangerous area for ships, and as many of us that have been in the area a while know, there are a lot of shipwrecks out there at the mouth of Delaware Bay.
Yes, okay.
So the Overfalls was the station that was out here.
And it was great it had the lights at night, and what other things did it do to help people know?
Well, there were a few primary things that the ship had to help people navigate safely. Obviously, the light being the biggest one that most people recognize. The second would have been the foghorn. On foggy days, the foghorn would have blasted every minute or so, and you could hear it generally for at least 5 miles, maybe a little bit longer.
That's awesome.
Depending upon the weather conditions. But the third thing was the ship also had a radio beacon, and other ships would home in on that radio beacon to find their way when they couldn't see.
Right.
And the radio beacon could go for much further than the light or even the foghorn could go.
So it was very important for the history of ships. So yeah, well, I think we should go take a look on board. So let's go ahead and look up on. All right. We are now on board, and Michael's going to share some of the highlights of being up here, and you can come and do a tour anytime. If you can do private tours and tours when they're available.
Absolutely. So the Overfalls is open for tours, usually around May 20th, May 22nd time frame.
Yeah.
We've moved our opening day up a little bit to coincide with National Maritime Day, and we close for public tours on Columbus Day weekend. So we only have one more weekend left if you want to come down and see the ship. But otherwise, we're always available for private tours. All you have to do is go to our website and contact us through the website, either at the phone number or at our email address, and we'll be more than happy to arrange a private tour, whether it be for a family or a group of individuals or even a business if they'd like to come see the ship. We'd love to have you.
That's great.
But right now we're on the bow of the ship, and this is an area of work. So what you see here on the bow is we have the spare anchor over there. The actual anchor is sitting on the land. The anchor weighs about 3,000 pounds. And then off to the starboard side of the bow here, you see this black marker over there. One of the things that the Overfalls Foundation is known for is we manage the Delaware Maritime Hall of Fame. And that's to recognize people in the state of Delaware for their contribution to the maritime industries.
Wow.
So we do that, and the names of the winners are inscribed on that stone there.
That's wonderful.
But as you can see, the ship, she was built in 1938, so there are some older things some people might not recognize. Most ships today are built with air conditioning.
Yes.
Back in 1938, they didn't have air conditioning, so they had these air funnels, and they would turn these air funnels to face the wind to help bring air into the ship. Obviously, in storms, they would turn them away from the wind, but on a good day, they would want to turn them into the wing to bring that fresh air in.
So they had fresh air. That's important, yeah.
You'll see different colored things around the ship. So a red valve, for example, is going to signify a fire main. So the red lines like that are designated for fire protection.
Okay.
This yellow can, you'll see some yellow valves on the ship. That usually means fuel of some type, whether it's gasoline or diesel oil. In this particular case, this was for gasoline that they used for their motorboat when they would go ashore.
Okay.
And then you'll also see some light blue ones. Those are for fresh water for drinking.
Oh.
And the reason why they did that is they wanted to make sure you didn't confuse the lines and accidentally pump fuel oil into your drinking water tank.
That would
You
not be good.
No, it would not be good. And obviously it had happened before, so they didn't want it to happen again.
Colors are very important.
And that's pretty much a military and international standard now for a lot of that.
Yeah. So there used to be, how many people would be crew members? Do you
There were generally 8 crew members who did
Okay.
the what we would call the grunt work, the heavy duty work, and then there were 4 what they would call officers who were responsible for the administration of the ship. They were all petty officers, and the senior petty officers, in some cases chief warrant officers, were actually the officers of the ship,
Okay.
and they ran the business of the ship.
And so how long were they on the ship?
Well,
typically?
generally they would serve 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off.
Okay, that was
So it wasn't
good.
too bad. Most of them had families ashore nearby. So actually for military life, it wasn't bad. You were relatively close to home.
You actually got to see your family
That's
every 2
right,
weeks.
that's right.
That's great. All right, well, let's go ahead and look at some
Sure.
other highlights.
Well, one thing that people ask us about are these numbers that we have on the ship. And what we have is a donation program, and you can actually purchase a rivet along with other items on the ship. If people want to make a donation of a significant amount, we can actually sell them a rivet. And so each of the rivets has a number assigned to them. And then when you purchase a rivet, we actually have a brick with your name or whatever you'd like inscribed on it. We install the brick in our walkway.
Do you? Oh, that's great. And that's very important because members are what's keeping all of this going. Right?
Absolutely. Our members, our sponsors, and our donors, they're all critical to keeping the ship alive.
Yes, and that became really important back when I guess you needed the finances, and so you joined that foundation, and so it's all members and it's all unpaid, all volunteers.
It's all volunteers. We don't have any paid members, and if anybody is interested in volunteering with the Overfalls, please let us know through our website. We'd love to have you.
Okay, great.
And we need scraping paint and,
Yes.
and doing repairs to people who help us with finances and marketing and business and event planning. We need all of it. In fact, this year we have 2 high school interns helping us from Cape Henlopen High School.
That's great. Oh, that's so nice to see the young people coming in.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
So we're here at the stern of the ship, or this particular area is traditionally called a fantail. And back here, this is kind of like the business end of the ship, of making the ship move through the water. So you would have a propeller underneath where we were, and you would have a rudder. And the propeller was there to move the ship, and the rudder was there to steer the ship.
Okay.
Now, it's a requirement, and it's still a requirement today, that if for some reason your steering mechanism fails, or in this case your rudder fails, you have to have an emergency means to steer the ship. And on this ship, what they did is at the top of the rudder post, they basically put a nut. And you had a wrench. There's a big wrench over there, and you can take that big wrench and put it on top of your rudder post, and then using ropes connected with the windlass, you would be able to help steer the ship in an emergency. To my knowledge, that has never been something that had to happen in the life of this ship, but you just never know. Most ships, the smart thing to do is if you lose power, you lose steering, you drop your anchor and you wait for help.
That's great.
This is a windlass that operates on air, compressed air, and it's one of the things we'd love to try and get operational again. She did operate for a while, but it hasn't been running in a while, but we'd love to get it operating again.
Yeah.
But a windlass was used to help haul in ropes.
Oh.
And this particular one is located back here because I believe it was also used to help steer the ship. And I'll show you how they used to steer the ship in emergency if it ever came to that. Although I don't think that ever happened in the life of this ship. So a windlass is a very common piece of machinery aboard a ship. They're still used today. And basically you wrap the line around it, and then you turn the windlass on, and it helps pull the rope in. These ropes are very heavy. The ones on this ship aren't too bad, but some of them can be much larger in diameter. So your typical rope, you can see this is still a pretty good size, but I can get my hand around this one, but some ships have much larger ropes, and they're a lot harder to pull in. And items like a windlass would help with that.
Okay.
they're a little bit more modern today. But your typical wheelhouse will obviously have a steering wheel. Although today a lot of modern ships, they just have the joystick. Depending upon the type of propulsion, they may just have a joystick. But this ship operated, they had an engineering department that operated the engines, and the deck department managed the driving of the ship. So when they wanted to ask the engine room to speed up or slow down the ship, they used this device here called an engine order telegraph. So a lot of people know these from the movies. So the bridge, the people in the wheelhouse, would order a particular speed. Usually they'd pull it back and then set it where they want it. And then the engine room would get an indicator and see where it was resting, and they would have to answer with a similar device in the engine room. And then you would see this inner needle would move up to match the other needle, saying, yes, I have received your command and understand. So one time on one ship I was on, we were pulling into a port. I was a cadet at the time. Artifact. This is the original bell for the LV-118 when she was built. So pretty much every ship has a bell. And the ship is no exception. In fact, in the older days, they did a really nice job. They would engrave the bell, and it was used a lot of times for ceremonies. So we take the bell out for ceremonies, and we'll ring the bell for certain ceremonies. Inside the ship now, we're in an area that the main crew would work. So this is where the petty officers that ran the day-to-day operations of the ship lived. So they lived two to a room. They shared a rack, as we call it. They had a mattress, they had a locker, a mirror, and that kind of was about it. So they didn't have much privacy, but you've got to understand they were standing watches. So on average, someone was probably not in their stateroom with another person at one time, because the person that was with them may have been standing a watch at that time. So they probably had a little bit more private cards or had some food to eat. But this particular ship being so small, there was a lot of commingling between the officers and the enlisted ranks, the senior petty officers and the junior petty officers. So for recreational purposes, they would watch TV together or watch a movie together. Fortunately, these ships were anchored offshore, so a lot of times they were able to get TV reception. Is the anchor windlass was below decks. So this would have been a pretty important feature that would have been kind of ahead of its time. You don't see the anchor windlasses below decks very often. But because of where these ships were stationed in the Northeast, you had to protect them from ice in particular. So by putting it below decks, you was protected from ice, and you could use the anchor anytime. Now to pull the anchor up, usually they would pull up this ladder. It's still used today. It's used by pilots. So when a pilot goes out to a ship today, the ship will throw out a Jacob's ladder, and the pilot will basically jump off the boat onto the ladder and pull himself up the side of the ship. Now some of these ships are 40 feet or taller, so it's quite a dangerous operation. It's one of the most dangerous operations at sea is to climb up and down the Jacob's ladder during a storm or rough weather is tough. Now a lot of ships that may have what they call a side port, where they open up basically a big door on the side, they would try and bring the pilot in through the side. In 1938, this was the stove she was built with. Now this ship was originally intended to be a coal-fired stove, and then during construction, the Lighthouse service decided to convert it to diesel oil because that's what the ship was carrying for her fuel. So this is a diesel oil burner that's used to heat up the plates on the stove. So as you can imagine how hot this got in here, this is an uninsulated stove, and probably what it smelled like. Everything you ate probably tasted like diesel fuel. Officers, but generally not like a commissioned officer. So there were 4 of them. You had the captain, chief engineer.
All right, so Michael, we would love to know how volunteers can help at Overfalls. So what are some of the things you're looking for volunteers?
Well, we need volunteers to help us in all aspects of our operations. So we have our Dirty Hands gang. They're the guys that help make sure the ship is in good shape. They help keep her freshly painted and cleaned and ready for tours. They meet Tuesday mornings. We have our ship store operators. Those are the people that work here in the ship store in our welcome center. Basically just selling the items we have to sell and helping record support our tours.
Okay.
And then we have our tour guides themselves. We're always in need of tour guides. So if
Okay.
anybody would like to be a tour guide, we'd love to have your help. And we're excited to get volunteers of anyone from junior high school age all the way up.
Okay, great. And you would do the training, like giving this.
We train them and teach them how to do it. In fact, we would love to get some high school kids, if they would be
Okay.
interested, to come help us with our tours,
Oh.
because we think that would help
Yes,
get their
get-
friends down to the ship
yes,
and,
the young
and help us
people,
teach the
too.
maritime history of the area.
Very
But then we also
good.
have needs in our business end. So we need help with our finances, managing our finances. We need help with event planning and coordination, advertising and marketing,
Yes.
reaching out to the schools,
Okay.
helping us with our Delaware Maritime Hall of Fame program. So
Yeah.
we have opportunities for anybody with any kind of background
Any
that
interest.
we could use.
And even if they just want to become a member and support that
Absolutely.
financially, that would be great too.
Absolutely. Memberships are not expensive. Please just visit our website at overfalls.org. And you can find out all the details on becoming a member or just volunteering.
Yeah.
And one last thing I'd like to highlight is our new weather station. That's up on top of the ship's store, where you can go to our web page and see the local weather conditions. And then at the top of our mast, it may be a little difficult to see from here, but we also have added a weather camera. So that weather camera will give you eyes on sight to see exactly what the weather conditions are in the Lewes
And it's
Lewes
on there
Canal.
24/7.
It's on there 24/7, absolutely.
That's great. Well, Michael, thank you so much. I think this is a great place to come and learn about the heritage of the maritime heritage, and so we hope that you'll all come out and see Overfalls. Thank you.